Thank you for joining me once again. In this tutorial, we'll be learning how to create an Ubuntu instance on AWS. And all we need to do is just log into our AWS console. And firstly, we should check to make sure that we are on the correct zone where we want to create the instance. You can create it in different zones. For us, we're on North Virginia, and that's where we're going to launch our instance in. And there's different options how to launch it. Just go to your instance, click on the orange launch instance button, and here we're going to search for Ubuntu. There we go, and we'll see all the list of Ubuntu operating systems. We select the free tier because we want the free tier version, and click on select, and here we can choose the instance type. The free tier eligible one is T2 micro with 1 CPU and 1 gig of memory. And here we look at our configuration details. There isn't much to change here. This is just a simple setup. We could do an IAM role if we wanted to, but not necessary for this tutorial. And here we're going to max it out to 30 gig, which is the maximum allowed size for free tier instances. And usually I like to add a name for my instances. So here I'm adding a name for it, and it's CP tutorials. And we configure the security group here. We don't have any setup, but since this is a simple setup, we can just create one here, and we just give it a name, and then we configure the rule. For now, we'll just do the SSH. Later on, we'll configure the HTTP and HTTPS, as well as the MySQL and all the databases ports that we need. For the SSH, you can leave it on public, or you can choose your IP address, which is what I've chosen here. And you review your details before you click on launch. And yeah, we'll click on launch, and this is very important. Here you need to download your key pair. This gives you access to this instance from SSH terminal, or even on FileZilla, whatever you choose to connect to it with. So we give it a name, and then we're going to download this key pair, and you must try and keep this safe, because anyone with access to this key pair can actually access your server. And once that is done, we can click on launch instance, and launch an instance. You can see the instance is now launched, and then we go to the dashboard. We should be able to see the instance, but it's on pending right now. It takes a few seconds to get up and running. If we refresh it, which we should do, if we refresh it now, we should be able to see it running. There you go. So the instance is active, but we need to now assign an elastic IP to it, so that we don't use the dynamic IP, which changes every time we restart the server. So we should allocate an IP to this instance so that it can stay constant. So we can check for a IP address by searching for it on the services panel. That's one way to go. We can also find it on the left hand side toolbar. On the left hand side bar down there, you can see it, elastic IP, or we can just search for it. Either way, whichever option you choose, you can easily find anything you're looking for if you just search for it. I prefer to search for it, and you just search for elastic IP, and you click on it, and it should bring you to this elastic IP control panel. And once we allocate it, there you go, you click on allocate IP addresses, and here there isn't much to configure. Just choose from the Amazon pool, and if you want, you can give it a name tag as well, which is usually what I do. I'll give it a name and just call it the name of my instance, and then put IP at the end, so that I'll know which is which, because over time, if you keep creating instances, you might get confused as to which IP is for which. So it's good practice to give it a name, and then you click on allocate. And once it's allocated, now you have to attach this IP to the instance we've already created. So that's what we should do. And you click on actions and you go down to associate IP address, and you choose instance in this case, and then select the instance, and then you also select the private IP for this instance, and this will make sure that the IP address is tied to this instance. And then we click on associate. And once that is done, we can now verify that the instance is not connected to this particular elastic IP. So if we go back to our EC2 dashboard and go into instances, and then we can click on the instance, and then we can see the new IP address which we have just created is now associated with this instance. And if we go back to the elastic IP dashboard, if we go back, which is somewhere here, we can just search for it. If we go back to the elastic IP dashboard, there we go. We can verify that the IP address and the one in the instance is the same, which tells us that we've successfully attached this IP address to this instance. So that's pretty much it. From there on, we can use it to connect on SSH into this server. Thank you. Peace. Hey guys, welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to install Apache 2 on our server that we created in the last lesson. So here I'm connecting to the server, the EC2 server that we created. There's two ways to do it, either with the DNS address or with the IP address. I'm going to show you how to connect with the IP address now. So if we clear the screen and we do the normal commands, and you can see we've selected our key file, and then we're connecting with the IP address that we assigned, the elastic IP that we assigned on the server in the last tutorial, and that will give us access to the server SSH. And obviously, the first thing before you start installing anything is to check if there's any upgradable packages. So sudo apt update will give us a list of upgradable packages. And once we check that, I think there's about 8 packages that can be upgraded. So we just run the upgrade command, and here you can just press enter because Y is basically the default, and it's gonna read and install all the available packages. You just have to wait for it to complete, and once that is done, we can now proceed with the next step, which would be to install Apache server. And here, okay, so the upgrade is done, and now we type in the install Apache 2 command, and that will also run fairly quickly, and that should be it. Yeah, so that's basically done. And here we can check the status of Apache. Once it's installed, it usually just starts to run automatically. But we also have to, since it's a server that's going to be running a website or some other app, we have to decide at some point what we're gonna run with this server, we have to figure out a way to make it always restart, to actually run on restart. So we type in the systemctl to enable Apache to run at every reboot. And here we can check the Apache version, and pretty much that's it. We've actually configured Apache, and now we can change the directory, the server directory, www directory, so that we can be able to run things like WordPress on it. And that's pretty much all we need to do. Reload Apache and we're done. So thank you for watching, and share and like and subscribe. Peace. Hey guys, welcome back again to another tutorial. Today we're going to connect our domain name to our EC2 instance that we created in the previous videos. Right now the domain we're going to be using is this domain, the codesandpixels.me, registered at Pokebun. They're not sponsoring me. Anyway, so we go to Route 53 on AWS. Firstly, we need to create a hosted zone, basically like a container that will hold this particular domain for us. And we put in the domain name. I usually put in the domain name, and then I also give it a description and a tag, so I can be able to distinguish which domain is which, because as you keep adding more domains, you're probably gonna end up confusing yourself with which domain is which. So I give it a name on the tag, and then we proceed. Once you create the hosted zone, it's gonna create DNS servers, and it's gonna create some name servers for you to use. So you're gonna copy that and go back to your where you registered your domain, maybe GoDaddy. I use Pokebun. Enum is another one, and you replace your default name servers with the Amazon name servers. And that's what I'm doing here. Once you do that, there's actually not much else you need. The only thing I figured is that sometimes you have to add the elastic IP address of the EC2 server on your domain registrar as well. I do that. It's not necessary, but I do that as well. So now we go back to our so here we've actually added the name servers. Now when we go back to our instance, we pick the IP address, which is the elastic IP that we've been working with, and we go to the zone file on our registrar, and we create an area code for the domain, codes and pixels. We save that. And then I also create another, a couple of them, I think 3 of them. So we have the one for codes and pixels, the one with the wildcard, and then the www domain, and we tie those two to the IP addresses. The rest of those zone records, we're going to delete them because we don't need it. So once we're done, we close this. I will come back here to delete those later stage, and then we go to our Route 53, and we start creating our records on the Route 53. Since once the domain resolves and everything is routed via AWS servers, then we have to now create our records on the hosted zone on AWS. So here I'm removing the records that are on Pokebun so that it doesn't conflict with the one on AWS. If you just registered your domain and you've not used it for anything, you probably won't have much of this on your domain records. But I've been playing around with this in previous tutorials and testing that I've been doing, so that's how I have a lot of these on. I'll still share those tutorials later on. So this is what you should have on your zone file, and this should be good to go. So you have the domain, the wildcard, and the www, and that's it. You're done basically with Pogbon or your domain registrar. And here you go back to Route 53, and we go to our hosted zone. Before we do that, I usually use DNS checker to check the name server to see if it's resolved. It's a very good tool actually. So here I type in the domain and I select the name server and I click on search. Once you click on search, it's going to go through and it's going to try and see if it's resolving correctly. So you'll see the name service that we added. It's now showing up with a green check mark on it. If it's not resolving, you'll see it as a red cross on it. So everything seems to be fine right now. So the next thing we have to do is to go back to the EC2 server, the instance, and once we are there, we're going to pick copy the IP address, the elastic IP address, and we go back to Route 53. And we go to our hosted zone. We only have one, but as we grow, we're going to have other ones there. So we go to Codes and Pixels and we open that hosted zone, and we're going to add more records on it. So here we're adding the normal record and we tie it to the IP address, and it's going to be an A record. We create that record. We could have actually done all of them in the same window, but let's do it one by one so you can understand. And here we're doing the wildcard one, and we also make it an A record, and we add the IP address. And the last one I think should be the www record. So we type that in, www, and we add the IP address, the elastic IP address, and we create that record. And I think that's pretty much all we need to do for now. So if we go to DNS checker and we check the A record now, and as you can see, the setting is on the A record, and you can see this takes a little bit more time to resolve, so just be a bit patient with it, because remember we removed some of the information on Pogbon, so it's going to take a while to resolve all of it. If we try to access the domain, we will not get access to it. I'll tell you why. The reason is because our security group, when we created the instance, we only allowed access through SSH. So now we need to add, make some changes on the security group so we can add the HTTP and the HTTPS access, as well as MySQL and any other ports we need to open. So we open the security group. You see here we only have the SSH enabled. So the inbound rules is only SSH that is open. So if we open the security group, we go to edit. I'm going to go to edit rules, and here you see that the only rule we have is inbound is SSH. So we're going to add HTTP, and we're going to add HTTPS, and we're going to add MySQL, because we're going to be running WordPress later on, and these three we should do for now. And we open the ports to anywhere or to specific IP addresses if you want. That's up to you, but I usually do it this way, and you save the rules. Now if we go back to the browser and we try to access the domain, we should see that the new domain is now active and available publicly. And there you go. So thank you for watching, and come back again for the next lesson. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace. Welcome back, guys. In today's lesson, we're going to be installing MariaDB on our instance. And all we need to do is to type in the MariaDB installation command. And once we do that, the installation is fairly quick. Type in yes and press enter, and the installation will begin. And once we are done with that, we check the status of MariaDB, which usually actually starts automatically once you install it. But the next thing we have to do now is to make sure that it's able to restart automatically every time we reboot the server. So we type in the systemctl command to enable that. And next we're gonna run the MySQL post installation script. Here it's asking for root user password, which we don't have, so we press enter, and then it's going to ask us to set a root user password. You type in the password and re-enter it as well and press enter, and the prompts that come up, just press enter and keep going all the way to the end, and just press enter. Yes is the default, and you get to the end. Here it's already installed. So now we're going to test the password we created for the root user, and as you can see that we're able to log in. So that's pretty much it. Next lesson, we're going to install a phpMyAdmin, which we're going to use to manage our MySQL server. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Peace. Welcome back, guys. In today's lesson, we're installing PHP on our AWS instance, continuing from our last lesson. So here's the PHP command. I added a few modules that will help us run things like WordPress, so that we don't have to install it later on. So once you type in the PHP install command, you just press enter and you just patiently wait for it to install. It shouldn't take that long. It's just a fairly quick process. It's just basically speeding through it right now. And so basically once that is done, we will enable the PHP module. And right here we just type in the enable PHP module command, and once that is enabled, you just restart the server. Here I'm checking the version of PHP that we installed, which is 7.4, and you can create a PHP info so that you can check if PHP is actually running correctly with all the modules. So you just do sudo nano, create a PHP info .php file on your server directory, and here we can see when we go to that file on our domain, you can see that PHP is enabled on this server and it's running correctly. Now in some instances you might need to install PHP Fast Process Manager, which is what we're going to do right here. You just type in the install PHP FPM command, and here we go, it's already installed. And you can also install the set environment variable module with the CGI as well, and we've done that. You just restart PHP. Once that is restarted, you enable the PHP FPM module, and now it's enabled, but you still also have to disable the actual PHP module that you installed previously, so that the server will run with FPM instead of the normal PHP that we installed before. So if you haven't done that, these are the commands to use to disable PHP and enable PHP FPM. If we go back to our PHP info document that we created, you can see that if you refresh it, you will see that PHP, the server API, is now on the FPM module. Thank you once again, and please like and subscribe and share if you like this video. Hey guys, welcome back to our lesson on AWS for beginners. Today we're installing LetsEncrypt on our AWS instance that we've been working on. So the first thing we need to do is to set up CAA records, and to do that we have to go to Route 53, and we're going to use the domain that I've been working on, which is the codesandpixels.me. And we did set up this hosted zone in one of our previous lessons. So what we need to do is go back into it, and we click on create record, and here we select CAA as a record type, and we type in the LetsEncrypt in the value for this record type, and we save that. Optionally, we can also add another CA record if you want to receive notifications about any malicious problems regarding your certificate, but we're not doing that for this server. We just want to keep it simple and straightforward, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to cancel out of here, and that's pretty much it for Route 53. Next, we're going to install Certbot client for Ubuntu, and here's the command for it. Once we type in the command, we press yes and we let it run. And once that is done, we're going to enable HTTPS with the Apache plugin. And here's the command to issue the certificate for this domain and a couple of other subdomains that I'm going to use later on. They're not active yet, but I might as well just issue the certificate for it right now, so I don't have to do it later on. So that's why these options are coming up. If you're just doing it for your normal domain, you will not get the screen, but if it does come up, just select the default SSL config file. Here you can see that the certificate has been issued correctly and successfully. So next, we just check the directory to see the two files that have been created by default by LetsEncrypt. Let's test the domain and see if this certificate has been correctly issued. We could actually test all the other subdomains, but since they are not active right now, it won't come up with anything. But this particular one is this particular main domain is already active, so we check for that, and you can see it's successfully been issued. But before it's going to work on the domain itself, we should redirect the HTTP to HTTPS. So that's what we're doing here. So we open the default config, and here we change the rewrite rule for this particular domain. We replace server name with our domain, which is codesandpixels.me. I personally like to run my domains without the www, but if you prefer the www in front of it, you can put it. It's all about preference. So here we just type in the domain to replace server name, and we save this file. Just be mindful of your typos. So we correct that. That should be codes and pixels. Okay, so that's done. Next, we're going to edit the SSL version of this default config file. So here we're going to add the rewrite command. There you go. So we add that. Just remember to change the server name to your domain name as well, and we save the file. We reboot Apache and we go to the domain, and we'll see that the domain is now redirecting correctly and that the SSL certificate is active. If you click on certificate, you will see that the SSL certificate is being issued correctly and it's active on this domain. So next we're going to disable TLS. version 1 and version 1.1, which is no longer secure. So that's what we're going to do now. And to do that, we'll open the I think it's called the options the options SSL file, and here we go to SSL protocol and we just add TLS version 1 and 1.1, and that's pretty much it. We save this file and we exit out of it and we reboot Apache, and that's pretty much it. Now we would like the certificate to automatically renew on its own, so we don't have to come back and do it every 90 days. So if we open the control file, we select Nano. I usually use Nano as my editor, and we add the renewal prompt for it. It will check and it will also renew it and restart the server on its own. If you want here as well and you want to receive those emails, you can also add your email address here if you want to, but it's not necessary. But that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Peace.